Rachel Donovan had always thought of herself as a practical woman. At 34, she had built a stable career in marketing at a well-known Chicago firm, had a small but cozy apartment in the city, and a daily routine that made her feel safe, if not exactly fulfilled. Mornings were always the same. She'd slip on her heels, grab her leather tote, walk to the corner coffee shop for her large latte, and then catch the train into downtown. Her life was efficient, predictable, and comfortably ordinary. But comfort often hides a quiet emptiness, and Rachel knew it. When the weekends rolled around and her coworkers went home to families, partners, or vibrant social lives, she usually found herself curled up on the couch with a book or Netflix, a glass of wine in hand, telling herself she didn't mind the solitude. Most days she didn't. Other days, she wondered how long it would last before loneliness caught up to her. That Tuesday morning in late October started like any other, except for the rain. It was one of those gray, steady downpours that turned the sidewalks into rivers and sent everyone scrambling into coffee shops with dripping umbrellas. Rachel pushed her way into her favorite cafe on the corner, shaking off her coat as the warm smell of espresso and baked goods wrapped around her. The line was longer than usual, but she didn't mind. She opened her phone, scrolling through the barrage of emails waiting for her at work. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the man in front of her. His clothes were clean but worn, his dark hair damp from the rain, and his hands trembled as he dug into his pockets for change. The cashier's smile was polite, but strained. "That'll be $3.75, she said. The man's fingers fumbled with coins. He looked embarrassed, muttering under his breath as he tried to count. The line behind them shifted impatiently. Rachel could practically feel the tension building, the sighs from customers in a rush. Before she thought twice, she stepped forward, slid her card across the counter, and said, "I'll cover it." The man froze, his eyes lifting to hers. They were brown, deep, and startled, like he hadn't expected anyone in the world to notice him. "You don't have to," he said quickly. "I know," Rachel replied with a small smile. "But it's just coffee. Everyone deserves a warm start on a day like this." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then, slowly, his shoulders relaxed, and something in his expression softened. "Thank you," he said. The words weighted with more than simple gratitude. Rachel brushed it off. "Don't mention it." She took her latte when it was ready and left the shop, certain she'd never see him again. But fate had other ideas. 2 nights later, Rachel was leaving the office late, her heels clicking against the damp sidewalk as she hurried toward the train station. The city buzzed with traffic, neon signs flickering against wet pavement. As she descended the steps toward the platform, she noticed a familiar figure sitting on a bench. A battered backpack rested at his feet. He looked up just as she passed, and recognition sparked in his eyes. He stood quickly, almost embarrassed. "It's you," he said, as though surprised the universe had given him another chance. Rachel laughed softly. "The coffee guy," she teased. "What are the odds?" "Name's Daniel," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "And, thanks again. That day, it meant more than you think." She tilted her head. "It was just coffee." "Not to me," he said quietly. They ended up talking while waiting for the train. Daniel told her bits of his story. He had studied architecture, once worked for a mid-sized firm, but after his father's illness, financial strain, and a few bad breaks, his life had unraveled. He was between jobs now, staying with a friend, trying to get back on his feet. He spoke honestly, without self-pity, and Rachel found herself listening more intently than she had to anyone in months. By the time her train arrived, she surprised herself by giving him her number. At first, their exchanges were simple, texts about coffee, the weather, small talk. But soon they stretched into longer conversations, messages spilling into late nights. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, a way of noticing details most people overlooked. And when he listened, he really listened. Rachel found herself sharing things she rarely voiced. How sometimes her career felt like a treadmill, how the quiet of her apartment could feel too heavy, how she wasn't sure what she was searching for anymore. Meeting in person became inevitable. They started with coffee again, then evening walks by the river, conversations that lasted until street lights hummed on. Rachel hadn't realized how much she'd missed simply being seen, until Daniel looked at her with those steady brown eyes that seemed to carry both weariness and hope. She told herself it was just friendship, just a little kindness extended and reciprocated. But the truth was, something was shifting, slowly and undeniably. One evening in November, they sat together on a park bench overlooking the water. The city skyline glowed, reflected in the rippling river. The air was cold enough for their breath to show, but Rachel felt a warmth sitting beside him. Daniel turned, his expression unguarded. You know, when you paid for that coffee, I thought it was just a gesture. But it saved me that day. Not the coffee, the reminder that someone cared, that I wasn't invisible. Her throat tightened. I didn't do anything special. You did, he said, his voice steady. You saw me. And now, I can't stop seeing you. Rachel felt her world tilt, as if the ground itself had shifted under her. For so long, she had believed her life would stay neat and predictable, untouched by sudden change. Yet here was a man she'd met by chance, reshaping everything she thought she knew about herself. From that night on, things deepened. They shared meals, stories of childhood, dreams they'd buried. Rachel discovered Daniel had an eye for architecture even in ruins. He'd point out small details in buildings she'd walked past 100 times without noticing. Daniel learned Rachel loved painting, something she hadn't done in years, and he encouraged her to pick up a brush again. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of doubt. Her friends warned her to be careful, to think about what she wanted long term. Daniel wrestled with pride, uneasy about not having his life together yet. But through every hesitation, the connection between them grew stronger. What Rachel had once believed was only a small act of kindness had become the doorway to something she hadn't dared to hope for. Love, raw and unexpected, blooming in the cracks of ordinary days. And as the winter deepened around Chicago, Rachel found herself no longer dreading the quiet of her apartment. Because now, her phone would buzz with Daniel's name, and she knew her life had shifted forever.